All right, thanks, Lauren. Thank everybody at B&H for having me today. Thank you all for coming. Thank Canon Cameras for sponsoring me today. Thanks to Matthew back in the back, who's going to make me look good on video, right? Okay, best side. So, how many of you are professionals? Any professional photographers? Couple, 3, 4. How many of you are amateurs? Serious amateurs, probably most of you serious amateurs, right? Well, I'm going to do I'm going to show a lot of pictures today. I don't like to pontificate a lot about photography just because I'm not sure that you accomplish as much by talking about things as you may by actually looking at photographs. So we're going to look at a lot of photographs. I mean, this is a pretty long time window. This is a pretty intimate group, so we can probably do questions as you go along. I kind of prefer to hold them till the end, and then I'll stay as long as anybody wants to ask questions. But if you've got a burning question, you can't wait to hear the answer, then certainly we can move forward. So just a little bit about my background. I have been a photographer for a little over 30 years. I started in a small newspaper in Kansas, in Topeka, Kansas. I worked there for a while. Then I was in Denver, Colorado at a newspaper there, the Denver Post. I was there for a while. While I was there, I started working for Sports Illustrated. And then in 1988, I came to the Calgary Olympics for the Denver Post, and then left the Denver Post to work for Sports Illustrated, first as a freelancer, then as a contractor, and then as a staffer. So all told, I think I've done somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,500 assignments for Sports Illustrated. I've had 60 covers, a little over 60 covers, and a whole lot of water under the bridge. So anyway, we're going to talk about a number of sports today. I always consider the 4 principal sports: football, basketball, baseball. Hockey's kind of a distant fourth, but that's kind of what our main sports are, Sports Illustrated, and then the Olympics every 2 years. So we'll go on and talk about a few things. We'll talk a little bit about remote cameras, of which this is a remote camera baseball picture today. Football, which is probably I always say it's my favorite sport to cover until after daylight savings time, and then when the weather starts to go to hell, I don't do quite so much with it. You know, hockey, easily the hardest sport that I have to do. The puck is really small, it's very tough to cover. Again, remote cameras in basketball. Remote camera at the Olympics in the hockey venue in Vancouver. Okay, and I said I wasn't going to pontificate, but now I'm going to pontificate. 5 things I believe, and this is what when you go to sell yourself to clients, this is one of the things that I always tell people, is that you don't buy me for the photograph, you buy me. You get the whole package. I mean, you get who I am and what I'm about. And these are things that I believe that comes with my package. Treat everyone with the proper amount of respect. Family comes first. Never stop learning. Number 4, the 3 most important words in the world are I love you, followed closely by I am sorry. The 2 most important words are thank you, and the single most important word is please. Number 5, realize the world doesn't revolve around you. We'll go into football now, show some football pictures. You notice a lot of you guys are probably interested in the equipment. There used to be a thing in the back of some of us who are older will remember the Kodak Brownie camera. There used to be a set of instructions in the Kodak Brownie camera. Better tips for getting better photographs. One of the tips was, if you're not getting good photographs, move closer. And you'll see that a lot of the photographs that I take are very tight, and that's the move closer idea. We do it with telephoto lenses now, but it's still the same idea, that you need to move into the subject, get the subject where it has impact, and makes a dynamic photograph based on the way the action comes to the camera. The idea of anticipating peak action, we're going to talk about that a little bit here in just a second with a diagram. Having the right camera nearby when you're photographing. In football, I use a 50 millimeter lens around my neck, have for 25 years. Just the right lens often when you're there. I'll explain a little bit about how I do that in a second. Okay, 5 things about football photography. Do your homework. Know who is playing in the game and what kinds of action to expect. You photograph a passing team, make sure you're on the right side of the quarterback, so you're looking into him. Make sure that you know if they throw a lot of out patterns, in patterns, downfield, so on and so forth. Know something about who you're photographing. Know your editorial viewpoint if you're an editorial photographer, or even if you're a stock photographer. Know who the important guys are, the important players, and try to record the plays that they make to the best of your ability. Number 3, this is an old rule that when I came into business, old timers who did football with a 4x5 speed graphic called 10 yards ahead of a good team, 10 yards behind a bad team. Of course, now with the long telephoto lenses, it's more like 50 yards ahead of a good team, 50 yards behind a bad team, but the philosophy remains the same. If a team is dominating a game, they're moving forward, and when they're on offense, if they're on defense, they're pushing the other team back. So you want to be ahead of the good team, behind a bad team. Number 4, vary your angles and lenses. Very important part of any photography, but certainly football, with the repetition of telephoto lenses, same lenses, similar position, being able to change your angle up, down, back and forth is important. Number 5, it's all about the faces. One thing you'll see, not just in football, but pretty much throughout my photographs, is a lot of intensity in the faces. Okay, here we got a football field. Now, I don't have my pointer here, but I'll try to make this point. If the offense is going this way, and you have a right-handed quarterback, so he's facing this way, you want to be to this side of him. You want to be looking into the open side of the player. Now, that's not to say that occasionally you won't make a picture the other way, but for them to do that, they have to reverse their body and throw against their body to make that play. Very few players can do it. Almost no college players can do it. And at the NFL level, a handful. Michael Vick. There is somebody else. This new guy, Robert Griffith, can do it, but there's not a lot. It's very hard to throw against your body. If I want to throw that way, I step and throw that way. If I want to throw this way, facing this way, I have to turn my body to do it. It's hard to do. So, little thing about that. Being ahead of the team and selecting your background. Selecting your background is really important. A lot of times people want to be in the end zone because you have an unobstructed view looking straight ahead. In a lot of modern stadiums now, particularly professional stadiums, the TV bays are your background. So if I'm in this end zone and I want to shoot something in here, I've got 2 ugly big TV cameras from my background. If I move a little ways over, I may be able to put an out-of-focus crowd in the background. The perspective of crowd to the action is really important also. If I'm photographing from this position, action into here, I'm here, play's here, my background is 50 or 60 yards away, way out of focus. If I'm photographing here to here, my background is only 20 yards maybe out of focus. Much sharper, harder to pick the picture out. So just a couple little things to think about when you go into football photography. We'll try to emphasize where those come forward now as we go into the photograph. Again, peak action picture, the anticipation, a lot of this stuff is knowing the sport. If you are, this I'm sure was a second and long or third and long play in football, obviously they're going to have to throw the ball downfield. Who are the deep threats on those teams? Who are the guys that are capable of going downfield? Know who they are, figure out where they are, position yourself accordingly. You know, a lot of times you're in such a rush to beat the traffic. I always am in New York. I'm always trying to get out of the Meadowlands as fast as I can. But if you just wait around sometimes, the best pictures are often, you know, long after the game is over. Great players, great pictures. Randy Moss was always one of my favorites. I could do a whole slideshow just on Randy Moss. And one of the things that you like about photographs like this is you notice the muscle definition. You know, it's like a Greek god. And these guys are like, it shows the athleticism, the ability of the body, things of that nature that you just don't see in a typical athlete. You know, to me and 110,000 of my closest friends at the University of Michigan, these sports venues are pretty staggering. A game at Michigan, you come in, and you say, God, that stadium doesn't look that big. And then you realize you come in at the halfway point. There's like half the stadium's above you and half the stadium below you. There are some of these college stadiums that are remarkable. Penn State, Southern Cal, Michigan. Now, going backwards, that's a beautiful selection for a background if you have that out of focus for your photograph. always look good at Michigan. Backgrounds are always good at Michigan. Illinois, you almost can't get a background there. You notice you got an out of focus building. We got, a white tent back there. So even a strong action picture, which this is a lot going on in this picture, you kind of get lost in the background there. Conversely, this is a 50 millimeter lens picture that, because of the selection of the background, works a lot more effectively. Again, that's just a 50 millimeter lens. So you've got your long lens and you're shooting and you just pick that lens up. It's pre-focused. Some guys autofocus it now. I've never done that. I've always just taped the focus, pick it up, and it's right there. And there's an angle in there in which it's about 12 to 15 feet, in which essentially anything between about 6 feet or 8 feet and about 15 feet is going to be in focus, and you're going to be able to keep everything right there without focusing. My friend Peter Miller has really worked this picture really hard. This is a camera laying on the ground, and then you shoot up at it with like a little right angle finder. Some guys lay flat on their stomach. I can't do that anymore. I'll never get back up. But a nice angle, that kind of diversifies things. Gets your subjects up higher. Call that the heroic pose, when the subjects are up, projected into the frame. It's like another old rule of photography. If you're not getting a good picture, bend your knees. It's like I shoot all football games, from my knees, as low as I can get. I put this picture in. This is actually Barry Sanders, who's of course been retired now from the NFL for years, but this was when he was at Oklahoma State. This was kind of the picture that launched me at Sports Illustrated. This was like one of my first big major spreads, kind of put me on the map there. The 1987. That's from BCS game last year. We talk about anticipation of play. I always like, if I can get there before the ball, I think it makes a more dramatic picture. When you get to the action, when you get the picture before the ball gets there, it puts you in the perspective of the players making the reception instead of after the fact when they've already made the play. So if you can get there quicker, always better, in my opinion. Same thing here. Same thing here. Talking about backgrounds now, you get this new stadium out in the Meadowlands in New York. You have two teams play, the Giants and the Jets, and they change the banners that go around the stadiums to the various teams. This is the Jets background. The Giants background is a really nice, rich blue. It's very difficult with the Jets game to get a clean background. Very, very hard. Just the way the banner is made, it stretches around the field, just doesn't, really hard to knock it out of focus, even really tight. Again, now here's a thing where we use the light. A lot of guys want to shoot a lot front lit. I personally prefer to shoot a little more backlit if I can. Backlight emphasizes a lot of things, like first it draws the faces out if you're exposed right. And secondly, you see things like the grass flying here, that it adds an element that you're to the picture that you don't have. Love grass fields, hate artificial turf. It's always better on grass. Here's another example of a photograph that has that nice backlit grass, flying around. Unfortunately, this is in Jacksonville, not a good place to shoot for background. This is like as tight as you can shoot it. It's still not far enough out of focus. Conversely, this is in Foxborough. This is an example of something where the background doesn't distract at all from the peak action of the play. Faces, faces, faces. Like if you can get the faces, always it's going to be more. Late in the year, this is pictures taken in January. The lower the light gets, the easier you can do front light, the lower the light gets. Think about it. 1 o'clock in the afternoon, this time of the year, the light's up here, casting a shadow down, more difficult. Baseball is always real difficult like that with the hats down. The later you get in the year, the lower the light gets, the more interesting it works in terms of like how you get it light underneath the helmet. Again, peak action, knowing where to look, where to play. This is in at Boston College. You notice like the background here is a little distracting. Again, nothing you can do. We're as tight as you can shoot there. It's like as much as you can do. This is the Florida Georgia game where they don't have the same backgrounds in Jacksonville as they do for the professional team, and you can see the difference. Like the background is totally clean here. Although that is very, very tight, but it is still a much cleaner background. Buffalo, another great venue for pictures. This is my series of people attempting to tear each other's heads off. So we have this one, and then this is the twist and turn method. This is a twist and turn a lot more method. And then eventually they get their head off. Oh, it's just a helmet, I guess. But it's a very violent sport. And sometimes I see things and I do wonder how they walk away. I mean, I literally wonder. But I would like to always be above 1,000th of a second. A little tip about shutter speeds in digital cameras as you go forward. I'm sure the camera manufacturers will dispute this. However, when we went from film to digital, one of the things was, you can shoot at a higher ISO, you can get all this more exposure. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the shutter speeds really aren't that fast. In other words, if you've got a 500th of a second, used to be rule of thumb on action was never go below a 500th of a second. A 500th of a second on digital is more like a 2/50th of a second was on film. They're significantly slower. My rule of thumb now is I don't like to go below an 800th of a second. I do occasionally because you're forced to, but I'd rather stay above an 800th of a second now on any kind of action photography. And of course that also varies. I'll point out, it's a good question. That varies with the amount of lens you use too. 600 millimeter lens, you need more shutter speed than you do with a 200 or 300 millimeter lens, where you've got more potential for camera shake, as well as also the telephoto effect causes the shutter to be less effective at a slower shutter speed. Again, talking about like using the light and things that are beautiful. This is shot before the game in Foxborough. The background is actually the scoreboard. I may have actually been laying on my stomach for this photograph to get up into the scoreboard. Again, faces and eyes. I think you have the perspective of the receiver here, or the concentration level that he's at, trying to make that play. The quarterback perspective. Now, I said I never go below an 800th of a second. Well, this is an example. This is Camp Randall Stadium in Wisconsin, which is like, they should issue coal miners hats with it when you go in. It's extremely dark. This is shot at a 500th of a second on digital, and it, for whatever reason, held together through the whole sequence and focus. I mean, but I don't recommend that. It's not the way you necessarily do it. The coaches. I don't put a lot of coach pictures in my shows just because I think they're not difficult to get. They are certainly a part of what your repertoire should be in any coverage. I mean, they're an important part of the game. I threw this one in because this is Jim Schwartz from the Lions, but I don't know why Randy Jackson from American Idol is the assistant coach in this picture. The elements is something get asked about a lot, and I know talking with photographers that I work with at Sports Illustrated, we talk about games and how cold they are. This is a game in Green Bay. I think it was 0, maybe a little colder. And we talk about how you get through it. And my philosophy has always been, okay, I'm 1/4 of the way through, and now I'm halfway through, and then now I'm 3/4 of the way through. And just so you kind of get through it. And the preparation in terms of like weather is really important. Having the right, particularly shoes, and your hands and your feet are the two big things in your face so you can see. But we perfected it over the years, and I rarely miss a photograph because of weather. I may miss it because I'm not a very good photographer sometimes, but I don't miss it because the weather has affected me for the most part. Even weather like this in Chicago, where it actually snowed, I think, 6 inches during the game.
Soldiers Field.
But this is an example, too, about changing your angles to do things. Going in the stands to do a photograph, particularly now in the NFL, is almost prohibitive. They don't like you up there. They don't want you up there. You have security issues with being up there. This is a situation where we appealed to the Bears before this game and said, we need to be up here. This is like, this is going to be an unusual situation. And they were very gracious and let us be up there. Also mattered that about half of the Soldier Field crowd didn't come because of the weather. But, it's important to think about, the big picture, so to speak. And like the weather was the key element of that game. Again, looking for different things. This is prior to a game. Sometimes you just are living right and the sky's beautiful and everything works right. Now, what's wrong with this picture? I'm going to test you if you've been paying any attention. I'm going to ask you guys, what's wrong with this picture? Pay any attention? How would this picture be better?
You were lower.
There, who said that? There you go, lower. You want to be lower. His head's not far enough in the sky. Still an okay picture, but it would have been a much better picture from a lower angle. People say about football, say, oh, you ever get hit at a football game? I had a really good run going. I went from 1990 until last football season. I hadn't gotten hit on the sideline. So that's a run of, several hundred football games, probably 400 or 500 football games. And so we were doing a game in Houston, and it was one of those ones where you kind of knew it was going to happen. It's coming along, and then that's me flying through the air. Now the embarrassing part of this being hit, first off, it's embarrassing to be hit because you don't, it looks like you weren't quick enough to get out of the road. But I'm on my back like a turtle, on his back, and I can't get up. And this kid, Des Bryant, is trying to pull me up, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't get enough leverage to do it. And I'm like egging him on. I'm like, you call yourself an athlete? You can't even pick up an old man like me? He said, come on. So now we're going to go into basketball. There's a little adage about sports photography. It always says, it kind of goes like this. If you can make a picture at another sport that looks like a different sport, you've done a good job. This would be basketball looking like football. So that's just a little something to think about. If you can make a photograph at a soccer game that looks like a basketball game, or a hockey game that looks like a football game or a baseball game, you've done something different. The great ones make great pictures. Now, again, we're going to talk basketball from the Sports Illustrated way is done heavily with remote cameras. I think I do a fairly small system, which is usually 5 remotes and then 2 handheld cameras. But we have guys like John McDonough, my friend John McDonough, maybe do 10, 11, 12 cameras plus 2 handheld. So we'll talk a little bit about how we do it. And this is another remote camera situation. Okay, 5 things about basketball photography. It's all about the angles. Try to give as many perspectives as you can. And we talk about perspective, like it's not like any of these photographs haven't been done before. They probably have in terms of angles, but we want to try to give the editors as many looks as we can give them. Choose your background carefully. Same thing, like a great photograph with a background that wasn't chosen right isn't going to work very well. Basketball, find a ball, you find a picture. And that's like true in a lot of sports. Basketball, completely. You have to have the ball in the photograph to make it work. Number 4, know the players and their habits. And this gets a little difficult, and for me sometimes, the NBA not so much. I kind of follow the NBA. But when I go to do college, a lot of times I don't know the players. I don't know what they do, and I'm try to watch practice the day before the tournament starts, NCAA tournaments, and try to figure it out. Number 5, take advantage of the unique aspects of the venue. Arena's got a bright red lane. Well, probably a good idea to point a camera toward that. That's going to make a nice background, colorful, good looking background. The Parquet 4 in Boston, great background. It's like it's distinctive. It tells you that you're in Boston. The Orange Lane at Madison Square Garden, always a good background. Think about where the background's going to work. So, here we go. My thoughts on positioning in basketball and what I look for. Most players are right-handed. They shoot with their right hand. If you're on this side of them, you're going to get a lot of pictures of the side of their head and the side of their arm. I'd rather be on the right-hand side as I'm facing in, so the players are facing into me. In the NBA, in college basketball, I'd rather be clear out by the 3-point line, looking back in. Just how the two sports happen to work, and mostly that has to do with the positioning of referees. NBA referees like to hang right in here. College referees like to hang right in here. And depending on the side of the court you're on, they can also be on the opposite side in the same position, but you're going to be blocked less, for me, in the NBA inside and in the outside in college basketball. Things that I try to do, I shoot, I probably haven't talked enough about gear, but I use like a 24 to 70 inside position, 70 to 200 on the outside position. Down the court, I use a different lens. I usually use a 200 f2, and on the Mark IV, which was a 1.3 conversion, that made it about a 260. I shot that horizontal because we have a lot of demand for horizontal pictures, so I shot that horizontal. If I was going vertical, I'd put a 1.4 teleconverter on and make it convert to around 300 60 millimeters or something like that. The remote cameras, which we'll get into here in a minute, we run a system, so when we're shooting with flash, they have computer units kind of like a Multimax. Do we know what a Multimax is? Anybody? No. Okay, what's a remote control unit that triggers cameras or flashes? We have very sophisticated remote control units that factor in what we call shutter lag. And that's the time from the point at which the shutter is released, either through remote or through the actual pushing of the shutter, until the shutter goes and closes. I call that shutter lag. So that when I photograph with my camera, I have a trigger on the side of my camera, remote trigger. When I push the remote trigger button, it's going to trigger my camera, which is now remote, plus whatever cameras I have set on that side that I'm photographing, and it's going to allow the shutters to be completely open on all those cameras at the very peak of the strobe cycle. Strobe cycle looks like this, like a bell curve. It's going to catch them at the very top. It does that in milliseconds, which is like, it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around it that they're that accurate, but it is pretty amazing. We use unfortunately, the Canon system, the older cameras work better on this. So I use like EOS 1DSs, the old big frame full chip camera, and Mark II DSs for those cameras, because we also don't need any speed in the shutter drive. We just need one frame because we're shooting with strobe. So go in a little bit here. So I shoot my handheld stuff, my available light stuff. I shoot the handheld stuff. I shoot available light now. I don't shoot that on strobe anymore. But all the remote cameras we shoot on the strobe system, electronic light. And do you guys even know what I'm referring to? Probably not. Going down a professional group. We go into a arena, and they mount these enormous strobe units. They're like 2,400 watt second units with big reflectors on them to light the court. Now, in the NBA, the arenas are already all lit. We don't go in and have to put in lights. College basketball, sometimes they'll actually go in and put lights in and light the arena in that manner. To try to put a perspective on that, a little handheld flash like you have puts on your little hot shoe in your camera would be what, 25 watt seconds maybe, something like that. So these are very powerful units that illuminate, and they also have very high flash duration, which allows the subject to be stopped by the flash, even though the shutter speed to sync with the flash is only a 2/50th of a second. This is the camera up on top of the shot clock, a different look. This is actually a camera through the glass. This is through the actual glass. Always used to amaze me that they allowed us to do this. The players didn't mind. They don't care at all. This is a camera that you can actually see. If you look, that little hole right there, that's where that is on this side of the basket. The different emotions of the game. This is another picture through the glass. Same look, one's horizontal, one's vertical. Again, you notice the amount of depth of field at 5.6 that you have in a photograph like this, where virtually everything is in focus. So there's a range in there which you have that the depth of field will allow you to keep pretty much everything in focus. This is a side camera, like a 300 millimeter lens mounted at basket level, looking across. And this, we want to talk about gear. Well, this is like some of the gear. This would be some of the gear that I would use for a basketball game. These are the cameras laid out. It's kind of what, some of those cases are remote triggers, and some are actually the metal we use to do it. This is me setting up a camera, through the glass, how we're going to do it. May have a finished version of that. That's kind of what it looks like when it's all hung, looking through the glass. This is a camera that's like placed on top of the backboard stanchion, like kind of maybe 9 feet off the ground, something like that.
You ever get a camera damaged by the blade? Let's say a ball hit it.
The question was?
Did you ever get a camera damaged by the blade? Like a ball will hit it or something like that, knock it off?
No. I've had, the question was, have you ever had a camera get hit? Michael Jordan stepped on a camera once in like 1989. I remember it was in Portland. That put the end of cameras on the floor for a long time. They kind of did away with that. But you have to be really careful, particularly if you're putting them on the floor. I mean, the players are in, if you're very close to the players in basketball, you just got to be careful about how you position them. The ones that are mounted up, rarely, more likely to have a drunk stumble into them if they're mounted in the stand, something like that, than actually to have them hit by a player.
I was just going to ask, in the previous picture there, the one that was up, the shot from above, I think 250, yeah.
Yep.
How wide is that one? Is that only 24 to 70?
That lens, that's a 17 to 40 at 40 millimeters actually on a full frame camera, so about 40 millimeters. This is my assistant Mike. He's actually programming that unit he's looking at with the orange keypad. That's that unit that factors in shutter lag to the quotient of the camera. This is all these cameras have to be focused, and then because you can't get consistent shutter lag on a camera if they're on autofocus. So everything has to be pre-focused, then you tape all the focus down when you have it focused, and then you move forward. And also you wouldn't actually want to do it on autofocus anyway, because the camera really wouldn't know where to focus. Experience tells you that most of these plays are going to happen in a certain area, and you just focus accordingly in what we're doing. And that's what we do before every game. We just go around and check all the focus on all of them, tape it all down so it can't come loose, and move on. Now you want to notice that this is like one of those things where you see what's the difference in these two pictures. Can you tell? Well, no, I'm jumping here. You can't see that? Like I'm a good 6 inches off the ground there. And Dwayne Wade checks my camera here. This is like this material underneath the camera. That is actually to gobo out any reflections that come out underneath. Remember, you're shooting through a piece of glass, so you're going to have reflections coming from all directions. That little flag that's beneath the lens will take the reflections of the white support, the white square, and then anything that's coming from underneath on the floor. That's actually probably the thing that is it's vital to making that picture work. So now, that all being said, you guys got some comprehension about where we're headed on this remote thing. This would be a typical Sports Illustrated game for what we would get out of a game, these photographs going forward. This was during the Lin Mania thing last March, I think it was. This is all one game. There's that high camera that we're talking about, the 17 to 40. That's a low camera with a 1635 or something. That's a crop version of the high camera, the high post camera. A down court picture, it's probably a 200-1.8 or 200 f2, something like that. That's a handheld picture with a 24 to 70 available light. You know, the reaction picture, that's probably a 200 f2. This is Carmelo Anthony, another down court picture, probably a 200 f2. This is that low angle picture right in the middle in the little cutout, the little box right here. We do that with like around a 20 millimeter lens somewhere in there.
Are you using auto white balance?
This is all strobe balance. The question was, what do you use for white balance? On the handheld material, I custom white balance all that. And there's a few tricks to doing that are helpful to know. One is that the lights are going to give you a pretty consistent white balance, generally speaking. So like, for example, at this venue, my white balance is 3800K. But then in your custom settings, you can go in and take out green. So I add some magenta to make up for all that green lane, which is going to cause a color shift, which is not going to be accounted for by the color temperature from the light. So and then the yellow, I add some blue because the cord is yellow. So I have a custom setting of around 3800, add some magenta to get rid of the green, add some blue to get rid of the yellow, and it looks pretty good. Now the strobe stuff like this is all just a straight strobe, color temperature. But again, this is one game. Jeremy Lin is also really good for pictures. We love Jeremy Lamb. I wish he played in every game I photographed. Now, why do you do all the remotes? Because this is what happens during the games I'm at. That's the referee's legs. I'm shooting between his legs. That's why you need a remote camera, because I can't see the game half the time because the referee's standing directly in front of me. Again, a lot of these remote cameras, these pictures get pretty repetitive on the remote cameras. You have to, take that into account. This photograph, we put these in because to show the athleticism of these guys, and again, how you have a basketball picture that looks like a football picture. I think they call that a hard foul. When you get to the NBA Finals, I've done a couple of them. I've actually done 4 of them, but we have some guys that are sensational basketball photographers, far better than I am. And so I become the overhead guy when they do it in Boston, and it's great. You go up to the 9th floor. You have a restroom right nearby. You have like the soda machine right nearby. It's one lens. I show up and like when I go to a basketball game and do remotes, for a 7:30 game, I get to the game at about 12:30 in the afternoon. So we do, and that's not because it takes 7 hours to get set up for the game. It's because the event venue is the players have to be on the court by 5. So if the coach schedules a practice, a shoot around, that's from 4 to 5. Then from 3 to 4, they may have a corporate game in which like Goldman Sachs rents out the gym and they have their guys come in and play for an hour. So we have to be there really early to get all this stuff done before the court's in use. And but for the NBA Finals, when I'm the overhead guy, I can get there at 6:30 for a 7:30 game and have plenty of time, and it's great. And then this gives you a different perspective, like because you're so high up that it's not a particularly good look for action, but it is kind of a different perspective, and it's kind of nice. Now, one of the things that's changed tremendously since I've been in photography is the preponderance of women's sports now. Easily the largest growing area of sports right now is women's sports, and it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger. And they continue to get better and better. Most of what I see women's sports, for the most part, is women's basketball, and it's mostly University of Connecticut because they happen to be close to me and they're really good. I like women's sports because they are very emotional. They celebrate and they're happy. They're glad when they do well, and I think they appreciate the coverage a little bit more too. I think it's a little more sincere. But the athleticism is getting there now, and this is Maya Moore, who was like I think 3-time college player of the year, tremendous player. You start to see though, like the amount of athleticism. Look at the muscle definition in her arms and shoulders. I mean, they're getting much more athletic. When I first started at SI, the idea of doing a high school game would have been absolutely preposterous. I mean, like no one would have ever thought. And pretty much I end up doing a high school tournament pretty much every year now. It may not, because as the NBA age has gotten lower and lower, you're really looking at NBA players maybe a year, or I guess it's now 2 years away. You have to go 1 year to college or 1 year to prep school. But it's become something that's like part of our sports routine now, is to have high school coverage. This is NCAA basketball. I did the tournament last year, the first and second round in Louisville, Kentucky, and then I did a regional final in Boston. And this is a little bit different. When we do all these cameras in the NBA, we put them all over the basket support. The NCAA doesn't allow that. They don't allow anything on the backboard, anything anywhere near the backboard. So you have to kind of set up a totally different group of remotes for NCAA basketball. This is also all available light. We didn't do any strobe on this. On the Louisville portion of this, we did no strobe. Of course, you can tell here in a photograph like this, it's not nearly the crispness that we have in a strobe photograph. Now, unlike the NBA, who doesn't like cameras on the floor, the NCAA doesn't have any problem with it at all. They don't care about putting cameras on the floor at all. So you tend to use those cameras, low-angle cameras, more in the NCAA than you do in the NBA. Now this is a situation where we could actually get a camera above the basket, which is a really nice look when you can get it. It's fraught with peril. This all has to be pre-focused at the right distance, which is when this is like probably a 300 millimeter lens. So it gets a little tricky because 300 millimeter lens, 100 feet in the air looking down, even from that distance, the amount of depth of field at 2.8 is pretty limited. So the focus has to be very, very precision, and then you have to hope that nothing slips. I mean, like a camera slips that much, gets bumped, it's out of focus. So it's a little fraught with peril, but when you get it to look right, it's a really nice look. This obviously would be, in talking about selection of background, we would much rather this photograph was shot on a nice green background or a nice red background. It would have much more drama, but you don't always get to choose your background, so you have to deal with what you have. This is a low angle picture from the side. It's underneath the scores table. Different thing. The reaction in college sports is usually a little better than it is in professional sports, and I like it for that reason. This guy Kevin Garnett's been playing in Boston now for a few years. He's a really intense guy. He's pretty scary looking, frankly. But he's great for pictures. He's been great for pictures. He actually, the last game I covered this year, before they got eliminated from the playoff by Miami, he actually landed on me. You sit in these little camp chairs, kind of like a folding chair when it's on the ground, and he just couldn't get out of the road. And he landed and he just pushed me down, put my chin down between my legs, and he was on top of me, and he kept saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "I'm okay, but I can't get up." And because he didn't want to twist his ankle. We were all tangled up, and he didn't want to twist his ankle. So he said, "Are you okay?" "I'm okay. Just can you get off of me though? You're starting, you're getting kind of heavy." And he's like, "I'm okay. I think I can get off." And so he gets off. Then he pulls me up, and he goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." But I wasn't okay. I actually messed my lower back all up. It's kind of like, truly, even though he's skinny, he's still 275 pounds. I mean, he's 6'10" or 11. He's a big guy. But some guys always make great pictures. If you keep your camera on Kevin Garnett, at some point, something pretty good is going to happen. It's Ray Allen after he broke the all-time three-point record. I had a plan on this. He only needed one three-pointer to break the record the night that we were photographing, and it was at the end of the court away from me. And so everybody's at the other end of the court. Everybody thought they wanted to get the shot. And to me, I didn't think the shot was all that significant. I thought the reaction would be better, and I thought he would do what he did. I thought he would turn around and face that direction. Now, why did I think that? Here's why. Okay, so this is the Celtics benches over here, then the visitors bench is over here. Ray's wife sits right over here. Now, and his mother. So my whole thought was, I'm going to go for, if I don't get the shot, I actually got the shot too. It's kind of from the side and back. But, to me, this was the money shot, and I thought about it quite a bit before the game. I said, I'm going to try to position myself here, and it turns out it was fortuitous thinking. I love this picture. It's one of my favorite basketball pictures because you don't have to have the head on the body to know that's LeBron. How we doing? Anybody got any questions? I'm going to break this up. No, anybody? Nothing? Yeah.
Do you have a specific strategy for firing all those strobes? Like, do you do it with when you take a handheld shot, or do you fire it separately?
I run them through my handheld camera, so
when
I'm
you
actually
press the shutter on your handheld.
Yep, it fires
every
everything.
single one of your mounted.
Right, that's my strategy. Right.
Okay.
Now, if I was not running them through my handheld, it's an anticipation thing, just like anything is. The difference is that when you're shooting with strobe, you've only got one chance. So, you got to have a sense of anticipation, maybe a bit more than you do with something like if you're doing a remote at a horse race, and the horses are coming, and you just lay down the motor and let it go. So it's a little. So yeah, strategy. I'm not sure it's a strategy. It's more of a innate timing thing that you develop over the years. So good to go hockey. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
So I guess regarding keeping the flash out of the player's eyes, I guess you worked all that out in advance. Am I right?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I used to always think, when I started in business 30 years ago, the question was, does electronic flash from the arena affect the players? I'll tell you a couple stories about that. One of them has to do with hockey. I was doing a BU hockey game, Boston University, and the coach there is this crusty old guy named Jack Parker. He's been there forever. He's been there more than 30 years. And I was doing a piece on a kid named Mike Greer, who's playing in the NHL now. He's a black player. He's going to be one of the first black players to play in the NHL in a long time. And so I was out there setting up the lights, and his office is right next to the building. Jack's office was. We're setting up the lights, and we're firing them off, and he comes out and he goes, "Oh, this will never work. You can't do this. You can't. This will not work. My goalie will never be able to see what's going on. This is not going to work." And I said, "Okay, but how about if we just try it, and see what happens?" Okay, let's see it. So the game ends, and one goalie. It was a 1-0 game. The goalie from like Merrimack or UMass Lowell or somebody like that had 57 saves, and the BU goalie had 41 saves or something. And so I'm packing up my gear back in the hallway near where Coach Parker's office happens to be. And he comes by and he says, "Hey, did you use those flashes tonight?" The point being is that the flash seems very obtrusive when it's an empty arena. When you've got a full crowd in there and a lot of noise and a game going on, it seems far less so. So it used to be a bigger deal. NBA, they don't even notice it. NHL, really not so much either. College, once in a great while. Pick if the lights get low and they're too low, then yeah, it can be a little distracting. And I remember once doing an Indiana high school state championship game, and Sports Illustrated wanted me to strobe it, and I refused to do it. And my whole theory was that these are kids that don't ever see this. It's not fair to them in a championship game to ask them to do something they've never seen before. So we didn't do it.
Do you need to have insurance?
I'm sorry?
Do you need to have insurance?
I can't hear you.
Do you need to have insurance because of the flash?
Yeah, $2 million liability. Yeah, when you go into arena, the question was, do you have to have insurance on this stuff? Generally speaking, we carry $2 million in liability when we go into a building. But if you're not in the building all the time, that's what they expect, is $2 million liability. So, all right, we'll move on to do a little bit of hockey. Hockey, easily, hands down, no question, the hardest sport that I have to photograph. I mean, it's hard. We'll get into why it's hard in a bit. Do some remote cameras in hockey, not as many. It's difficult. The puck doesn't really always go where you want it to go. 5 things about hockey. It's a lot harder than it looks. Number 2, it's all about position. Number 3, following that tiny puck is the toughest photographic challenge I know. Number 4, really good hockey photos get me excited. Number 5, know your arena, its position, and how to work them. Okay, hockey. Hockey position, come up the ice. Now, unlike some other sports, I don't feel like there's a distinct left or right side to hockey. In other words, like, you have a lot of right-hand skaters that shoot, or right-hand shooters that shoot right-handed, but the pucks, the rink kind of wide, they don't necessarily shoot always coming straight at you. So I'm not of the opinion that like it's a big advantage to be on the right or left side of the arena. However, I do like to be as deep into the corner as I can get. And the arenas in the NHL, some colleges have a little hole. It's about this big around. It's tiny, hard to get your lens through and move it through. They kind of end about here. Sometimes you'll get an arena that has one here, but not very often. And the reason being is that obviously it could potentially get into play. The puck could, it's more likely to go into play if it gets down further. Just as a general rule of thumb in any sport, I would rather be facing into the action, not to the side of it. When you go to Canada, all the Canadians want to be right here, and they are fantastic at hockey. It's like there's certain sport to certain nation. You want to know about hockey, go to Canada. They all prefer to be up here by the face-off circle. They do a great job from there. I would rather be down here looking more into the action. And in the Olympics, where you shoot through the glass, I'll actually shoot about right here, which is straight up the ice. Now you have to, obviously, then you're at the mercy of the glass. The glass has to be cleaned very thoroughly, it has to be optically correct. Some pieces of glass are better than others. That's where it gets into know your arena. and know your guys in the arena how to deal with them. Sometimes they'll flip a piece of glass for you. Sometimes they'll polish a piece of glass for you. A lot of things you can do to make it work. But that's kind of my theory in terms of like positioning. In terms of what to look for, you have to follow the puck in hockey, and it is really hard because the puck is tiny. And the guys tape their sticks black, so you can't see the puck distinctly off of their stick. So it definitely takes a lot of getting used to. I find it very, very hard. Now this is a shot, this is through the glass. This is the last Stanley Cup. And this is through the glass over New Jersey. Nobody wanted this spot. And I said, well, I'll take it. And we bought a compound called Novo, N-O-V-O. Everybody ever hear of that? You ever clean your headlights? That's what it's for, it's a headlight polish. And we just cleaned and cleaned and cleaned and cleaned and cleaned the glass till optically we got a pretty good cut on it. And you know, now when you're shooting through a piece of glass, plexiglass, there still are limitations about how telephoto your lens can be. So this was shot at probably 50 millimeters, maybe 60 millimeters. I'm pretty close to the goal there. But if you get out too far, the telephoto effect in the glass, it doesn't work. So you're limited in what you can do when you choose an angle like this, but you also should know by experience that most of the action is going to happen around the goal. So to me, it was a compromise that was worth making. Now, you notice some of this stuff is strobe, some is not. I kind of go back and forth on hockey. The quality in hockey available light is really high because of the glass. You're getting all this fill. Everything's filled because of the ice creates the white fill card underneath. So I kind of go back and forth on hockey. Sometimes I do strobe, sometimes I don't. Kind of depends on, I don't know, a number of factors. One, not the least of which is how much I've been doing. If I've been doing a lot of hockey, then I may do strobe because I feel like my timing will be better. If I haven't been doing as much, I may motor it because it's a little easier. I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. Now that's available light, you know, there looking up the ice, guys. Now the arena in Boston have a really good spot. I really like it. And it's like I can actually get up the ice like you are here. I have no idea how that happened. That's kind of an amazing picture when you think about it. It's like, you know, you got all four skates are off the ground there at one time. You know, this one's same way. When you can get down the ice in your hole like this, I'm able to see down the ice. That's almost got the opposite face-off circle. Because of the hole, you can get up the ice if you're deeper in the corner as opposed to being on the side. You can't see that. They can't see that picture happen. You know, sometimes we have to shoot overhead. A lot of guys like shoot overhead. I think it doesn't have as much drama, you know, looking down on the action. It's a much safer position. You see a lot of newspaper and wire service photographs in particular from an overhead position. I mean, it's perfectly acceptable. It's just I don't think it has quite as much drama as it does when you're, you know, shooting from the ice level. You know, sometimes the little things too, like there's no such thing as if a photograph communicates effectively, then there's no such thing as a bad photograph, right? So now for Sports Illustrated, this probably isn't that good a photograph. We probably would tend not to use that. But if you're shooting for Reebok helmets, well, maybe that's a pretty good picture. You know, get a pretty nice look at the product there. So, you know, look at Reebok gloves, I guess, too. You know, the other thing I always say about hockey that people don't understand when I do hockey, I moved to Boston 23 years ago, whatever it was, and I knew nothing really about hockey. I'd done a handful of hockey games, a little bit of Olympic hockey, a couple Olympics, but just didn't know a lot about it. The thing about hockey that when you don't know about it, that you come to realize that is really amazing, is that they're doing this all on a skate blade that's a little bit wider than a razor blade. I mean, it's really pretty remarkable what they do, and they're all on skates. Now, in terms of like being ready, you talk about the 50 millimeter lens picture in football. In hockey, it's a fisheye lens because that's right in front of you. That's the fisheye lens, you know, right in front of you. Fortunately, the puck jumped up there nicely. There's another, that's the picture you kind of want to get with it, where they're getting flattened up against the boards. Soccer. You know, I'm going to show a handful of soccer pictures and tell you what I think about soccer. You know I love soccer. It's great for pictures. You know, the faces are, you know, unprotected and you can see it very easily, so it's easy, I think, to photograph. I always tell students that if you don't have good hockey pictures in your portfolio, you may want to reconsider your profession. It's very easy to photograph, in my opinion, but by far the easiest of the sports that I photograph. I don't do a lot of it because there isn't a lot to do in America, except we have a World Cup every once in a while, stuff like that. Track and field, cross country, you know, these are all angle sports. You can do great stuff with angles. You know, this is a camera laying, you know, in the ground, shot up through the grass. The Boston Marathon, you know, this crazy mass of humanity. You know, we did this picture, and we actually ran a picture like this in the magazine, not with this pan blur effect. And we got a lot of complaints because if you get up in the middle of that picture, at the beginning of the marathon, you're going to find all these guys lined up urinating along the sides of the marathon because they've all been waiting in pins since like 7 in the morning for like a noon start. So we actually ran a photograph. We didn't realize it. There was like a pretty big uproar about it. Now, you can't see it. You obviously can't see it in like a photograph like this. Now, lacrosse, this is like a sport that's really growing like crazy. Any lacrosse photographers here? Anybody photograph it? Anybody ever photograph it? Yeah? Yeah, do you understand it?
Getting there.
You getting there? Do you understand it? I'm serious. I'm being serious. You know, like I've done it a whole bunch of times, and I get some pretty good pictures out of it every once in a while, but I have no idea what they're doing out there. It makes no sense to me at all. They just kind of go around in a circle, and then they pass it every once in a while, and somebody takes a crazy shot, and sometimes they score, and sometimes they don't. And sometimes they get hit very hard and knocks their mouthpiece out of their mouth. You know, I always say 2 great places to be early in the morning if you're a sports photographer. Golf course and a horse track, you know, both great places early in the morning. A couple years ago, Canon came to me and they said, we'd like you to teach a workshop about photographing windsurfing. And I said, well, that would be fine with me, except I don't know anything about windsurfing. It's not the first thing. They said, that's okay, you'll figure it out. So, so I went to Hood River, Oregon, to the Columbia River Valley, Columbia River Gorge. And it turns out a guy that I worked with in my very first job in Topeka, Kansas, lives there, is a windsurfing expert, used to publish a windsurfing magazine, and I did figure it all out because he took me out and showed me exactly what to do. And it's a really interesting sport. It's like really cool. I mean, I think it'd be really fun to do, but you just have to kind of know where to be. And it's not that hard. You're totally at the mercy of the wind. If the wind's great, they're going to do crazy stuff. And these guys are like BMX bicyclists, guys like that. They'll do whatever you ask them to do. Whatever they can do crazy, they'll do. You know, they're great for that kind of stuff. You know, rowing, we have a big rowing contingent in Boston because of the Charles. We have the second biggest regatta in the world after they call it the head of the Charles. It's after the head of the Thames in London. Beautiful sport. Can't miss. If you can get in a position to shoot rowing, you'll always get good pictures. Okay, let's get to go into the Olympics a little bit. This is in Torino. I always do 2 things at the Olympics. I do speed skating, Winter Olympics. I do speed skating and hockey. So it's kind of the same deal all the time. Every once in a while I'll do another sport, but mostly it's speed skating and hockey. Again, the speed skating is like when you think it's hard to skate on a set of hockey skates, look at the skates on the speed skating, and they are also wafer thin. They're really, really thin. It's amazing that they can do what they do. This is, I think this is Finland maybe, or Sweden. Sweden? Yeah, okay. You know, the Olympic hockey, the rink is bigger. It's a bigger rink, bigger surface of ice. And a lot of people think that makes the action less intense because they can't nail people down, they can't run them down. What I find about Olympic hockey is actually more physical. And not because of the dimensions of the ice, it depends on the matchups in the game. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that all the old Soviet Union countries all hate each other. They all want to kill each other. I mean, it's like, and so it's what happens is that, and of course also, all the NHL players that are in the Olympics, you know, those grudges all carry over. And so, well, a lot of times there's vengeance going on for things that have nothing to do with the Olympics, but have things to do. So I find the Olympic hockey is great for pictures because they, you know, so speed skating is a short track speed skating. Another sport that, you know, I have no idea what's going on in at all. They skate around in a circle, somebody makes a move, and somebody always gets disqualified, but a Korean always wins. That's bottom line. You want to know about short track speed skating? Ask any Korean photographer if they speak English. And some do and some don't. But if you want to know something, they're the guys that have the answer. It's a big deal there. But if you want to know about long track speed skating, you talk to the Dutch photographers because they know this is like it's a national sport. It's a really big deal. And they really know their stuff. They can go through, you know how you go the horse track and there's always some guy like that is a professional gambler and he takes your card and he goes, okay, here's how you bet. Oh yeah, and do the trifecta here and do this. That's how the Dutch are. You hand them your card and you say, who's going to win these races? And they go, okay, this. Oh, and this guy might do this. But they tell you exactly how every race is going to come out. They're experts at speed skating like we are about baseball or football or something like that. But they also control the music. And they have these little bands that play kind of like polka music in between the races. I like speed skating because I think it presents a lot of interesting angles that you can do that are different, and stuff that this is like really interesting photograph really brings out the drama of what goes on there. Again, we're talking about hockey positions earlier. That's looking. You can see how far up the ice that's looking. That's looking almost straight up the ice. Now this is Finland, right? Okay, all right. I always get all those Scandinavian countries messed up. It's a pretty tough-looking group. I wouldn't want to mess with that one girl in the middle there. The Canadians won the Canadian Olympics. A couple things had to happen. The men's and women's hockey teams had to win. That was like imperative. They rioted in Vancouver when Vancouver lost the Stanley Cup in 2011. This was a huge nationalistic pride thing with that Olympics. And the women won. Of course, eventually the men won as well after a kind of a rocky start. This was after the American men beat Canada in preliminary play. Now this is some overhead hockey remotes. Oh wait, I'm sorry. We'll go into this later. Hockey here. Now this is a series of pictures. This is 3 different cameras, the same photograph. So this is one version. That's another version, probably the best one. And then this is a straight overhead version of the same photograph. This is I don't know, everybody, a lot of people watch the Olympics. The Olympics are great, man. I would say the Olympics bring out the best in everybody, like not just the athletes, the media, the fans, everybody, the countries. It's great. This is the closing ceremony in Vancouver. These spectacles are really amazing. I think they're amazing. But I always wonder when you get done, like, you ever wonder what happened to these things? Like, are they going to turn up in one of those flea markets, out in New Jersey somewhere? Now, again, we're talking about going back to the whole what was going to happen in the Olympics there. Everybody wanted Canada to win the gold medal in the Olympics. Everybody wanted Sid Crosby to be the star. And all that kind of undercurrent went on throughout the Olympics in the back of my mind, and then as it got further along, it came to the frontal lobe of your brain. The whole idea that Sid Crosby could potentially be the last cover of the Olympics. And so when this moment happened, now this is, shot down the ice with the long lens coming forward, I kind of thought, what, I think I might have an Olympic cover. And I'd never had an Olympic cover, so it was a big deal for me, and that's, what it ended up looking like. Now, people ask me, said, do you ever have any covers? I said, yeah, I've had a lot of them. I had over 60 total in my career. And people say, well, how do you get a cover? I said, it's really simple. You have to get cover assignments. You don't get cover assignments, you're not going to get covers, bottom line. So I've been lucky to get a few cover assignments and lucky to get a few covers. When we're doing big games, you're competing with a lot of people for those covers. It's a very competitive, friendly competition. We're not enemies among photographers, but it is very competitive for any cover. Tom Brady's been, they love to put Tom Brady on the cover because, he's so good looking, they love to put Brady on the cover. So now, I always say baseball comes along in just the nick of time. You finish the basketball season, they got all these days that start at 12:30 in the afternoon and get over it, after midnight, and, all this kind of physical work of hauling big cases with lots of metal and hanging all these remote cameras and everything. And then baseball comes along, And baseball is kind of 2 cameras and 2 lenses and flip-flops and shorts and you know, a bottle of water, and it's great. Now the baseball though is a different animal, and we'll get into my theories about it here a little bit. And here's what I think. Baseball is the most cerebral sport to cover. The situational possibilities are endless. Now, when you're doing a baseball game, well, at least when I'm doing a baseball game, there may be some knuckleheads out there that aren't thinking at all, but when I'm doing a baseball game, I'm constantly thinking of the situation. So we've got first and second, 1 out. We've got a potential double play at second base. We've got a potential force out at third base. A single scores at least 1 run. Home run scores 3. If it's a 5-2 game, it ties the game. All these possibilities are all going on. You have to figure out where you're going to position yourself and what you're going to photograph on every pitch. And you have to constantly monitor all those things to be thinking the right thing. The situational possibilities are endless. Number 2, it's all about concentration. My friend Peter Miller had a great comment about concentration. And somebody asked him what the Olympics were like. And he said the Olympics are like doing 17 straight Super Bowls. And that doesn't mean physically it is. Physically it's demanding, but it's not the physical part that he's referring to. It's the mental part. And that's the fact that you have to be up every day, no days off. You have to figure out what's important. And that's what I find about baseball. It moves so slow, very easy to lose concentration, very easy to start, you know, not paying attention, and then it's all over. So, number 3, you have to know the players and their tendencies, same thing. Right-hand batter, you know he pulls the ball all the time. Well, you better be focused on the third baseman, the shortstop, the left field, or somewhere the play could happen. 4, don't be scared to change your position. It's a really long season. And it is. Like a lot of times, you know, you get at least 80 home games a year. Sometimes you can do a lot of games. Don't be scared to move around a little bit. Number 5, be ready for the action. It's almost over before it starts. Baseball positions. Now, a lot of you, you're at the mercy of the park here again about where positions are and what you can and can't do. A lot of guys like to be down in here, kind of looking back into the action. When I can get it, the positions I like are in here. They don't exist in a lot of ballparks, but again, I always rather be facing into the play than looking back at it. And this gives me access to sort of home plate, but definitely all 3 bases and the field. And that's where I would prefer to be. Now, left-hand batter, right-hand batter, which side of the field? Again, that's things that all go into the situational possibilities that exist. If you get a pitcher like Justin Verlander from the Tigers that throws 100 miles an hour, they may put a lot of left-handed batters up against him because he's, you know, left-handed batter against a right-handed pitcher is a better matchup. But they're going to be slow getting around on him, so the action's probably not going to happen at first and second base. It's probably going to happen at shortstop and third base. Those are all things you have to think about when you position yourself. So, you know, like where it may seem likely in that situation to come to the third base side and shoot this way because you have a lot of left-handed batters, you'd be looking into them on their open side at the plate, and they're going to hit more balls this way. If it's a very fast pitcher, those balls may go the opposite direction. So, again, possibility, situation, all things that you have to think about in baseball. Unique positions. This is in Cleveland where they actually have a glass door behind home plate. It's a beautiful spot for photography of the pitcher. This is outside third base position, but I really like a lot, particularly for plays like this when you get a peak action at home plate. Always looks better to me looking into the catcher on a home plate play, generally speaking, than it does any other way. You know, certain players, certain pictures. This is this guy, Joey Cora. He's retired now. He retired about 2 years ago. But he was always jumping all over the place. You knew if he was playing shortstop or second base, you're probably likely to get a good picture. It's Manny Ramirez when he was in Boston. Now, you notice this is a pretty famous picture of mine. It's won a bunch of awards and stuff. There's nobody at second base. There's no reason for him to do this. There's no likely reason at all. None. No, really. There's nobody giving a base. There's no throw being made. He just decided to take off. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. You know, follow the runner. A lot of guys didn't follow the runner because there was no play. I just followed it, you know, like, and the hunch worked out. You know, again, selection of backgrounds here. This is not an ideal background here. See how you get that edge of the scoreboard kind of cutting in there on the right-hand side and the foul line going down the middle. Sometimes you just can't. You know, like when these ballparks are crowded, you know, the positions are assigned sometimes. I just didn't get the spot I would necessarily have chosen for that game. You talk about the 50 millimeter lens in football and the fisheye in hockey. Well, in baseball, it's a 70 to 200 or a 135 or something around your neck for plays at first base. And they're going to happen. Certain players are going to happen more than others. If Dustin Pedroia's in the game, something good's going to happen all the time. He's always throwing his body around. Like, he even looked good when he's just hitting the ball, which is like most guys have got their head down. He looked great here. Great reaction all the time. You know, David Ortiz is another guy who plays the Red Sox. It's also, you know, somebody that will have more emotion than maybe some other players. A lot of times, after the play's over, may not necessarily, just like the picture of him throwing the ball here may not be as good as, to me, as the follow through, which is unusual with the leg up in the air. Again, pictures in the background. This is definitively Fenway Park. We know exactly where we are. You know, again, just as pre-focused on the play before it started. I knew we had a dead pull hitter up. This guy, Elvis Andrus, you know, he's a great player, and, you know, we're right on top of him as he catches it. The 100th anniversary of Fenway Park was, I think, happened in May of this year. This event went on for me for like almost a full year, because we did a book on Fenway Park, a coffee table book. I was definitely Fenway Parked out by the time this whole thing finally got over. Fenway Park is a really tight park. It's very small. The aisles are very narrow. It's very hard to do a lot of things that people want to produce, like a book or an unusual photograph. But this was finally the 100th anniversary, and that was the last time we had to deal with it, was on this day. This is kind of an interesting picture. The flyover thing is like, you know, they have flyovers at every game now. It's like, I'm not too impressed with the flyovers anymore. I always tell people, it'd be a lot more impressive to me when they start doing it indoors. And you start doing it indoors, flying those F-14, that'd be impressive, you know. You know, another look at the whole autograph thing, which is like, I'm mystified by the autograph thing. I do not get it. I mean, I don't have anything particularly against kids that do it, but I'm mystified by the whole thing. I don't understand it, you know, really at all. I'd much rather shake somebody's hand to get their autograph. But this also, the thing that I like about this photograph is that, like, it starts to date me, but these are kids. I mean, just look at his face. I mean, he's just a kid. He can't be more than 20 years old. You know, again, this goes back to what we're talking about with the Fenway Park coffee table book. One of the ways that I tried to approach this was the guys that hold the keys in every ballpark for access is the grounds crew. They're the guys they're there all the time. They're the guys you want to have on your side. And I'm very friendly with the grounds crew guy in Boston. And he said, oh, just come out whenever you want to come out. You know, like, well, just tell them you're coming to see me. And we're able to do some slice of life things in there that maybe we couldn't do at some other places. In Boston, they call this, you know, the Green Monsters, the wall in left field in Boston. It's like kind of famous, you know. Those indentations are places where a baseball hits the wall. So every one of those is where a baseball hits the wall, which is kind of remarkable. And think about it. The park's 100 years old. There's obviously just been redone a few times, but, you know, it's pretty amazing. And then that's what it looks like, you know. Not every one looks like that, but it actually leaves an impression in the wall when they hit it. They don't chalk the line, they paint the line. That's like cheating, isn't it? Like, you know, talking about like doing things to change the season up. You know, 7th inning of a game and it's 9-1, nothing's happening. What do you got? Take a chance. I mean, who cares? I mean, you know, you're not going to miss much. And that's when you do stuff like this. You know, you pan a runner going from first to second. End of the game stuff, you know, good. End of the game stuff when they win, it's good. You know, into the game stuff. These closer guys, you know, everybody's a specialist now in sports, you know, so like these closer guys, you know, like, you know, they go crazy when they just do one little thing. You know, they get one out and then they think they've like won the, you know, like, but this actually goes in, this is the Phillies the year they won it, World Series. This is the Yankees one of the times they won it, the World Series. The Giants when they won the World Series. In Texas, you know, the younger George Bush owned the team at one time, so he still has his seats, you know, are right next to, actually, to the photo positions. Like, I was sitting here, and then the Secret Service was sitting here, and the Secret Service was sitting here, and then George Bush was sitting where this guy is here in a blue shirt.
Did you
And
feel
his
protected?
yeah, well, no, he was great. He was like, and his wife was sitting next to him, and then like the older Bush couple were sitting next to them. And they were great. They were like very, gracious and everything. And you could definitely tell that like there was a genuine admiration between the people involved. I mean, they're very nice people. But the seventh inning came around, maybe it was the seventh inning, it might have been the sixth inning. And the Secret Service tapped me on the back and says, oh, we're going to get up. I said, oh, okay, when we get out of your road, so get up. And then they get up. The two Secret Service guys get up in the stands, and they got to kind of step up because you're in a pit, and they kind of got to step up, and then they're standing there, the three Secret Service guys that are with George Bush Jr., whatever, the George W., whatever the younger one is. And they're standing there, and then George Bush walks over to me and says, we're going to the concession stand, can I get you something? And I'm like, these guy's the President of the United States 3 years before. I'm like, no, I'm okay, I'm all set, I appreciate it. There's got to be, something. But no, actually, very genuine. The admiration between the father and the son was very evident. It was very, very, very sweet, actually. And then the Rangers team photographer, a guy named Brad Newton, said, oh yeah, they're like that all the time. They're very regular guys. And I have another friend, Lane Murdoch, who is an NBA photographer, who rides bikes with George Jr., George W., whatever they call him. One of the great new ballparks is this ballpark in Detroit. I love this ballpark. Very well thought out. Now, I put this picture in. This is a really simple picture. I mean, this is no great shakes as a photograph. But at Fenway Park, this is like extremely difficult. This is a really, really hard place to get in this position to do. And the reason I was able to get in this spot on this particular day, this is opening day of the 100th season, was because I knew the guy that sat in the seat, and he said, just come over, I'll leave, and I'll leave for the first pitch, and you can sit there and I'll get the picture. But it's really hard to do in Fenway because the aisles are very, very tiny. You can't really get in there. So one of my favorite baseball pictures, just the College World Series. They play this in Omaha, Nebraska every year, the NCAA College World Series. It's a great event. Unfortunately, we had to quit covering it at Sports Illustrated because they went to a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday final. And because we close on a Monday, it's never decided. So we're a week old by the time it comes back out. So we had to quit covering it, but it's a remote camera look there. It was a great event to cover. This is kind of what my life has been reduced to now. Got the old flyover going on there again, yeah. This is probably one of the more famous baseball pictures I've taken. This is Jason Varitek and Alex Rodriguez, grappling at home plate. This is a project. I'm going to flip through this pretty quick. When I was a young, ambitious photographer, I thought that I would do a book on American Indian athletes. Thought it was a great idea. Still do think it's a great idea. But marriage and children came along, and I've never really been able to pursue it. But I did some work on it for a while and produced some images I think are, I think personal projects often are good to work on as a photographer because it gives you, it's something that's special to you. These rowing pictures, canoe pictures, they call those war canoes, and they do that up in Washington State near the Lummi, they call it the Lummi Indian Reservation. It's off of Lummi Island up near Bellingham, Washington. But it's all about the war canoes. They're called war canoes because that's the tribes used to attack each other in them, and they still have these races between neighboring tribes. But it's all about, that whole thing is all about how the canoe is part of, the whole culture. Let's see, this is the captain of the Olympic basketball team from not the last London Olympic, but the one before in 1948. 1948 or 52? 52? 52, I think it was. But I tracked this guy down, and he's deceased now. Great guy, his name is Jesse Rennick. And I've tracked him down at a drunk tank in Tahlequah, Oklahoma. I found him. He battled alcoholism kind of his whole life. But he's this wonderful guy, really warm and endearing and sweet. And he said, so you want to photograph me with the gold medal? And I said, yeah, I do. He says, that'd be great. Of course, he was thrilled to see anybody. He's like hanging out and, actually, why would nest a drunk tank probably is too strong a word. It was a veteran's home for people with substance abuse problems. He said, yeah. And so he said, you want to see the medal? And I said, yeah. He said, put your hand out, close your eyes. And he drops it. It's like, these things are substantial. They're like, they weigh, 3 or 4 pounds probably. It's like really cool. But he was a great guy. It was an interesting picture, great thing to work on. This is on the Choctaw Reservation, which is in Philadelphia, Mississippi. They call this the World Series of American Indian Stickball. Stickball was the precursor to lacrosse. They saw this played in the early 1500s when who the Ponce de Leon came to Florida. He saw the Indians playing it there. And these 6 little tribes play each other for bragging rights to win the whole thing. It's a really violent game. The only rule is that you can't hit somebody while they're catching the ball. Anything else goes. You can hit high, you can hit low, you can hit from back, it doesn't matter. But you can't hit them while they're actually catching the ball. A long time ago, Sports Illustrated sent me to Alaska to do a thing on basketball in the Arctic. And I thought, well, this will be interesting. And it was. And we went up, and it's surprising that it's a huge deal up there in the villages. It's a really big deal. And people always compliment this picture, said, boy, the light's gorgeous on that. You know, like, what time of the day was that? 12:30 in the afternoon. It's like 24-hour sun. The sun sets at like 2 o'clock every day. This is one of these fishing villages where everybody lives on one street. It's just one street, and it's. I remember this kid, the kid in the sweatshirt. It's 80 below zero in this picture. I had the old Norman 200B battery pack. You ever see those? Like as a portable battery pack. We got 2 flashes out of it outside. 2. That's how cold it was. This is a project we did on Indiana high school basketball that a book publisher picked up after the fact and made into a little book. We shot this in black and white. This was one of the last years that Sports Illustrated wasn't digital, probably in the late 90s or early 2000s. The coach of this team has remained a really good friend of mine. He's Batesville, Indiana, is like kind of near Cincinnati, around Cincinnati, between Cincinnati and Indianapolis. But this documentary stuff is something that I did a lot of as a newspaper photographer. I don't do much anymore. It was a really great project to work on. I don't do a lot of portraiture. We're not for Sports Illustrated. I do some for other people, but occasionally I do, and it's fun. This is one of the issues I do work on, we all work on, is the Where Are They Now issue. And this is a guy named Louis Tiant who worked on that issue. This is a photograph of a football player, slow shutter speed. That's actually me in that yellow car behind there. I'm firing the camera from the car that's streaking the lights behind it. And the key to this picture is convincing the guy to let you mount a camera on his $150,000 Ferrari. One of my favorite portraits of a guy that runs an art museum in Vermont. Boxers are always great for pictures, and they're always very cooperative. They're always great for the portrait I did just recently. I just did this last week on a BMX bicyclist. Some football players. These are the Hasselbeck brothers. The one on the far right, wife is the one that's on The View. You know what I mean? No? I don't watch The View either, but it's basketball in Russia, women's basketball. Sometimes great things happen. If you just keep picking the camera up enough, something good's going to happen. We're doing a portrait of a windsurfer, and like literally this rainbow just popped out. Like, that's not in the studio, that's on the beach. SI for Kids often has a lot of really nice assignments. They're fun to work on because the athletes, generally speaking, are a little less pretentious about it and a little easier to deal with. This is minor league baseball. The guy on the top is 7'2". The guy below is like 5'3" or something. And that's just another SI for Kids thing on a kid that's a karate expert. This is actually, I'm going to tell a story about that. This kid, I photographed him. His name is Ivan Rodriguez. He's from Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And so I photographed him, and then, I sent him a whole bunch of prints and stuff. It's, nice, family. And so one day I come home and there's a package in the mail. And it's the Junior Olympic gold medal for the year. And it was framed, and then it was a note behind it that said, "Dear Damian, I like you have photographing me so much that I'm giving you my gold medal from the Junior Olympics this year." He was the national champion, like for 10-year-olds or 11-year-olds, whatever he was. And I was like, oh my God, I can't keep this. So I sent it back. I kept the note. The note was, I kept the note. I actually have the note on my bulletin board, but he's such a sweet kid. It's like sometimes, there's these fulfilling things that happen in photography that, well, not in photography, in life that happen that, make it all worthwhile. This is a thing we did in Florida, and this guy drove his bus between golf tournaments. He's like a professional golfer. You know, playground basketball, a different look at that. I've been to China a couple times for Sports Illustrated. I don't recommend it. It's a lot of work. Water's terrible. Food's like, you know, I'm always sick the whole time I'm there. So. And they do these sports schools. That was like this. These last two pictures are that when you're, I don't know, I assume they still do this, but you're identified. If you have your parents are identified, and their offspring are identified being one thing or another. Like this kid's parents were probably both strong people that, and they identified them and they put them in these sports schools in which they classify them that way, and they may not necessarily stay that way. Like if this kid suddenly grew tall, he may not stay in the weightlifting program. He may go in some other program. I don't know, judo or something. But it's interesting if they do this way and they do this like this. These kids were in the gymnastics program. And then I met somebody once from China that told me that, yeah, like they started out in the gymnastics program because their mother was a gymnast, but their father was a basketball player. And then she shot up, and then they put her in a basketball program. And I think she ended up making it to the Olympics. Now this is just we're talking about like as a photographer, the thing that you do the most is problem solve. That's like what, you know, kind of what you do is problem solve. You know, every job has a problem with it, every job. And so this is just something we did. Sports Illustrated called me and they said, we're doing a special ACC, Atlantic Coast Conference preview basketball issue, newsstand sales only, and we want to feature this kid from Germany who just came to Boston College, and we don't have any photographs of him, so there's 10 schools in the ACC that we want to feature. We have photographs from 9 of them from games from last year. We want you to take a photograph of him that will match the other 9 that were all taken in an arena during a game. Said, except we don't have a court to do it in, and it has to be done by tomorrow afternoon. I said, well, it's maybe an interesting challenge here. So now, fortunately, my daughter goes to Boston College. My assistant is a Boston College grad. We kind of had some contact there, so we started making phone calls, and we ran down a gym that had the old floor, and it was available, and the kid was available. So we came in and we thought, we'll just light it heavily from the back, and then the background will just drop out, just be a black background. We'll be able to do that. Well, as you can see, that wasn't going to work. So then we go to the seamless situation in which we're trying to make it look like it's shot in an arena, even though it really isn't shot in an arena, it's shot in a practice facility. And this is kind of what we were working with. And that's what we ended up with, I think, as a cover for the ACC preview thing. And yeah, if you look at it very carefully, obviously you know it's not taken during a game, but you know, it still made a picture. This is me in my stylish NFL vest. This is my friend Simon Broody and Peter Miller, who are both also in the Explorers of Light program before a game in New Orleans. They're working. Now, these are my favorite pictures coming up now. This is like my family. My wife, my oldest daughter, my youngest daughter, my son at a family wedding, the kids. This is a Strohmeyer mansion up in Massachusetts. My wife and I, my 2 brothers and I at the hockey game. My youngest daughter's quite an athlete. She's a really good ball player. I played college basketball, and she's a good player. Going to be good, I think. Pretty good field hockey player, too. Around a minute, too, if you want to ask a private question. Thank you.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.